Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since we've seen y'all. Welcome to the new people who are on the line. I'm Elaine Trigiani, and I am an art historian, and I live in Italy, and I design culinary travel programs, and I make olive oil. And we're here tonight to talk about olive oil, and we have a special guest in the house, Luann O'Loughlin, direct from Northern Virginia, DC area. She has a shop called Olio to Go, and she imports Olio della Donna, which is my olive oil production. So we're going to go kind of in depth on olive oil tonight. Also on the line with us is Lorenzo. Awesome. Everybody hold up your bottle of oil.
Everybody.
So Lorenzo's on the line too. He is a friend of mine. He's my tug helper. He's also a Tuscan chef. So he'll probably pipe up with some of his own recipe ideas, and he'll probably have something to say about the olive oil, so that's okay. We'll let him say his piece too. So I am going to kind of introduce y'all to my project, which is called Olio della Donna, and then Luann and I are going to actually taste olive oils, and as we go through our tasting, we are going to take questions from y'all, so you can type your question into the chat. There are too many of us to keep the microphones open, but you can type your question into the chat, and then Lorenzo will kind of feed us questions as we go along. And then we're going to cook a couple of recipes as well. So I'm going to just use some images to kind of introduce y'all to my new project. So hang on one second, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, Lorenzo, come va qua? Lorenzo, non ti sento.
Scusa, benissimo.
Okay, good. All right, so here we go. So first of all, I'm coming to you from my house here in Tuscany. So Luann is in Florence for a food event called Taste, and she's come out into the boondocks to be here with us tonight, and we're here inside my house. And this is what my house looks like in spring. So in about 2 months, this is what it looks like. So we're just right here behind the kitchen door. And I am just to the southwest of Florence, right here. So I make 2 olive oils, and one of them is made here near where I live in the hills to the southwest of Florence. It's actually just into Chianti Classico, where the oils come from. And then I make another oil that comes from the northwest corner of Sicily, which is right here. So I'm just going to kind of show you a little bit about that. And then we'll get started. So I have been advocating for high quality olive oil literally for about 20 years. And I actually moved to Italy because I was interested in olive oil. I'm an art historian. I was working at the National Gallery of Art in Washington. And I went to Sicily for a research project, and I literally fell in love with olive oil. So I've been working with olive oil for about 20 years. I've been making olive oil for 3, and I just opened my own company last year. So this is my first harvest. 2022 harvest was my first harvest, and I've made 2 olive oils, a Tuscan one and a Sicilian one, and they're really different one from the other. They have very distinctive flavor profiles, so we're going to talk about that tonight. Also use them in the kitchen so you can kind of have an idea of which oil goes with what kind of thing. So these are some of the Sicilian olives. So olive oil is a lot like wine in that the variety of olives and where it comes from has a large effect on the flavor profile. So if you just think about, the taste difference between a Cabernet Sauvignon that comes from Bordeaux in France and a Sangiovese from Chianti Classico in Italy, olive oils you can kind of categorize them in the same way. Italy has 560 different olive varieties. So think about that. That's 560 different profiles just right there of flavors of olive oil. Again, these are the Sicilian olives. I'm in the northwest part of the island, and the main cultivars are Biancolilla and Noce del Belice. We're in the Belice River Valley. This is kind of what they look like. Notice the olives in my hand. I'll show you another picture in a minute of the olives in the hand of the Tuscan olives. So these are the Sicilian olives. Again, Noce del Belice and then Biancolilla. And the origins of this whole project go back to 20 years ago when my aunt, who you see there on the left and on the right, that's Aunt Francesca, she said to me, I was in Sicily and I was on my way back to the United States, And I wanted to buy some olive oil because I thought the olive oil was really good. And I wanted to take them home. And she goes, you don't buy it, you make it. And I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, that's kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because Aunt Francesca said, you don't buy it, you make it. So I'm making it. So that's the Sicilian olives. Here are the Tuscan olives. And you might notice they're a little bit spindlier, the trees. The trees in Tuscany tend to be spindlier. Not all of them, but most of them on the whole are not quite as robust as the Sicilian trees, because there was a freeze here in the 80s, which literally killed all the trees from the ground up. So a lot of the trees were literally sawed off at the base and then grew back up. So one tree has sort of 4 or 5 spindly trunks, and some were replanted at that point. So you don't see very many kind of secular olive trees here in Tuscany. The varieties, there are 80 varieties that grow in Tuscany, and the most common ones are Moraiolo, Frantoio, Lecchino, and Pendolino. And then there are a couple of other varieties, and there's Maurino, which I also have some of in the Tuscan oil that I made. Here's what the groves look like when we're picking. This is Olio della Donna being harvested here in the Chianti Classico hills of Tuscany. And then here's the Tuscan olives. So the picture in the middle is a little bit of an exaggeration. And that was actually 2 years ago when we were making olive oil down on Prato Magno. And that was the result of a drought. So I'm just going to show you the picture again of the Sicilian olives. Sicilian olives in my hand, Tuscan olives in my hand. Just saying. Okay, again, that was a particular drought situation, but olive oil production is a little bit of, it's an agricultural production, so you kind of have to work with what Mother Nature gives you. So all olives have the potential to make really good olive oil, and I believe in all olives, and it's the producer who makes the difference. A lot of the kind of mass market stuff that doesn't have a very high price was probably produced also at a very low price, therefore it's on the shelf at a low price. And as far as we're concerned, I'm going to speak for you, even though we haven't talked about this ahead of time, but I'm pretty sure she agrees with me. There's a lot of kind of very low quality olive oil on the market, and that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about high quality olive oil. So again, it's the producer who makes the difference. So I literally do my best to make sure that the olive oil is as good as humanly possible. And I work with farmers who agree with me, and I work with millers who think the same thing. And we do our best to really make sure that the olive that we extract from the oil we extract from the olive is as best as we can possibly do it. So in order to do that, we use kind of, lots of fancy equipment. This is how we don't, we're trying to not compromise the quality of the oil as it exists inside the olive. So we use really state-of-the-art equipment. And what we're trying to do, again, is just not mess up the olive oil. And olive oil is literally a fruit juice, and you're extracting the fruit juice like you're making fresh squeezed orange juice. So you can kind of think about it like that. Olive oil needs to come from fresh fruit, the same way fresh squeezed orange juice does. And then it needs to be protected, right? You're literally dealing with a fresh fruit juice. So you have to take care of it. In addition, olive oil is a fat, so you're trying to protect it from oxidation. So everything that we're doing, the way that we pick, the way we store the olives, all of the fancy equipment that we use in order to extract the oil from the olives, and then everything we do after that point. Luann was talking about how chilly my house is, because it's probably 52 in here. We did throw a nice big log on the fire, but I have a storage unit which is heated better than my house is. Okay, so the oil's heated better than I am.
Keep it at a stable temperature.
We're trying to keep it at a stable temperature. It's heated to say I'm not letting it. You don't want it to freeze. It needs to be kept kind of cool, but it needs to be kept at a relatively stable temperature that's not too hot, not too cold. Although I'd rather it get cold than hot, but we're trying to not let it go either way on too far out on either end. This is my friend Piero, and he was in the last century a self-sufficient Tuscan farmer guy who was really into all of those technological advancements that you just saw those pictures of. So there's kind of a lot going on with the milling. But what's interesting about it is that it's technological advancements to what is basically a millennial mechanical process. So we're not using any solvents. We're not kind of, extracting oil by using any chemicals. We're literally pressing we mush up the olives and then we squish it so the juice comes out. Again, kind of similar to making fresh squeezed orange juice, where you cut the orange up and then you press it enough so that the liquid drops out. Same thing. So Piero, that's what Piero did. But Piero, and this is what Piero taught me that kind of made a big difference in the way that I look at olive oil and the way I taste olive oil and the way I make olive oil. And that is that he is a super traditional guy. Here he is picking his olives and he's using a little hand rake. You can see that here. He's getting ready to start picking this tree. But he really believed in technology when it helped. And one thing that really, one technological advancement that Piero really believed in is filtration. And I have a picture of, this is Piero, and he's in the room where he kept his, this is an ancient wine cellar, and this is the corner where he kept his olive oil store. And he would go in, you can see one, this is an olive oil, it's an orcha, which is made out of terracotta, and then here's obviously a stainless steel tank. He would, according to the moon phases, change the oil. That's what he called it. He called it changing the oil. So when we think of changing the oil, we're all at like the shop, where they're like working on our car. When Piero said changing the oil, he was going in and he was taking the oil out of one tank and putting it in another tank, and he was scooping it off the top, and he was making sure that the sediment fell to the bottom. So he was doing this quite often, actually, so as to keep all of his oil away from the sediment. And at the end of his life, he had the opportunity to have his oil filtered, and this is what we do. And we, instead of doing the scooping method from one jar into the other jar, we run the oil directly. As soon as it comes out of the mill, it goes right through a filter, and you can see how crystalline the oil comes out. And just as proof, on the bottom there, you can see clean cartons versus used filter cartons here. Cartone, and you can see this is the sludge that comes out of there. Anyway, that's a good kind of illustration of Piero's kind of open-mindedness, right? So I appreciate that about Piero, and I appreciate it so much about Piero that I actually named an oil after Piero. So my Tuscan oil is called Piero, in homage to Piero Dogolini, who taught me all those good things about olive oil. And then my Sicilian oil, which is what you see on the right, is called La Storia, which means the history, because this really, to me, represents the history of this whole project. And in fact, the name of my company, Olio della Donna, also comes from these Sicilian roots. So my family, back in the 1700s, owned land in an area of the countryside called Contrada della Donna, which means, this is just kind of an area of farmland that was called Della Donna, which actually means of the woman. So at that point, a woman would have owned that section of the countryside. But I like that Della Donna name, so I attached it to my olive oil. And then lastly, the label images are that great sun for the Sicilian oil. There on the left is by an Mississippi artist called Andrew Bucci, who has just a great kind of oeuvre. He created art his whole life and just has this lovely, wonderful kind of exuberant energy that really comes out in so many of his paintings. And I really like this kind of graphic representation of the sun, which to me represents the island of Sicily, particularly the oil that comes from there. And Luann had a hand in that, because you said to me, "Oh, I think I see a sun." Luann was knew what I was working on here, and she liked the idea of a sun image. And then there on the right is the painting by Rita Pedula, who is a Tuscan painter, and she paints these wonderful images of these kind of quiet, introspective women. And in this case, I know it's almost like the olive branch is the backbone of life. So I literally, when I saw this painting, I knew that was going to be the image of Olio della Donna, and that was before Olio della Donna even existed. So that's the story of the project. So we're now going to taste some olive oils, and we would be very happy if y'all have oil in your house. If you have Olio della Donna, taste along with us. That would be great. If not, you know where to get it. Luann's got a shipment coming in. I've got some inventory left. Everybody's going up to get their bottle. So we're going to taste oil. Taste along with us if you like. Feel free to ask questions. Again, type your questions into the chat, and Lorenzo will kind of field us questions, and we'll be happy to answer.
Sicilian first.
Sicilian first. Okay, I like this. Lorenzo, faccio così.
Ricordati la luce ancora un po' di più basso. Ancora un po' più basso.
Okay.
Vai
Così.
così. Sì.
Okay.
E
I'm
la
going to
luce.
show you before I go sit down, because Zoom does its own thing with the lighting. Again, you just saw these, but here are the 2 bottles of olive oil with their lovely labels. So when you get a bottle of oil, this is what they are. Right, do you want to pour those and I'll come around?
Accendi la luce.
Okay. Grazie, Lorenzo.
Prego.
I always shake.
Oh, good.
I mean, it's filtered, but I still always shake.
I've never done that. Maybe I'll start doing that.
A beautiful color here.
This has been in the kitchen too long.
Because it's a little cold.
Yeah, look at it. No, it's been, so this bottle has actually been in my kitchen, which generally isn't really heated. So the storeroom is heated, but the kitchen's not. So I can actually, you can kind of see some, I don't know if I can.
It's a little cloudy.
So it's a little cloudy, but it's because it's been, can y'all see that?
Sì.
It's a little cloudy because it's got a little just kind of congealed.
Yeah, the bats are coming together.
Right. So look at what Luann's doing. She's kind of warming the oil up in her hand. So when you taste olive oil, you want to warm it up so that it kind of comes to room temperature, body temperature, so it releases its aromas.
When you want, we have some question.
Okay. Let me just say one thing and then we'll move to questions. The first thing we do when we taste olive oil is we smell it. So we kind of warm it up, we let some of the aromas release into this little cup, and then we smell it, and we're just kind of thinking about what we're smelling. So while we're thinking, ask a question.
Okay, you ready? Could you explain a little more about the various pressing of the olive and the quality of the oil?
Wait, say that again, Lorenzo. What about the pressing?
If you explain a little more about the various pressing of the olives. I think the various kind of Alfredo, for example, or
okay.
mechanical.
So we are making, I mean, my goal, as I said before, is to make olive oil that's as perfect as humanly possible. So I'm really trying to go for super high quality olive oil. And we, the way that it works is you crush the olives. The olives are basically literally rinsed to get any kind of just, literally dirt and dust from the fields off, and then they're crushed. We're organic, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that. It's almost like a given to me. We're all organic agriculture here. So the olives are crushed down to a paste, and that is done in a closed container that has no oxygen exposure whatsoever. We're trying to prevent oxidation. That's kind of why we're, that's like the point of all of this, is to prevent oxidation. Oxidation is what will make olive oil go bad. Any oil or anything that even, like even a pecan or a peanut, some kind of, can go rancid. So the oil in the nuts actually can oxidize. Oil, any fat will do that. If you find an old stick of butter in your fridge, you can smell it, it'll go rancid. Olive oil will do the same thing if you don't protect it. So everything we're doing is protecting the oil from oxidation. So the olive is mushed up into a paste. The paste is then kneaded very quickly, and it's all temperature controlled. So we're trying to keep it below 26 degrees centigrade. So we're not letting it heat up at all. We're keeping it cool. The olive paste, so just literally skin, pit, pulp, everything is smashed up. That gets kneaded a little bit, just enough to encourage all of the oil molecules that are in the pulp of the olive to come together. Once that happens, you actually have visible drops of oil, and they are extracted away from the paste. And that is done by spinning. There is a mechanism called a decanter that is a big horizontal tube that spins really fast. And literally just because of the weight of the contents, the solids of the olive itself go to the outside and the liquids float on the inside. Oil floats on water. There's some vegetal water in there and it's just skimmed off. And basically that's it. Then it goes to the filter, which you saw. So that's how we make olive oil. And that's how we make super high quality olive oil. One quick more word, and then we're going to go on to we'll continue with our tasting. So the idea of keeping it at a certain temperature, we're trying to keep it below 26 degrees centigrade. That keeps oxidation at bay. If you go over 26 degrees centigrade, you can actually get more oil out, but you will ruin the quality of your oil. So just as an example, and this will kind of, we don't really need to be talking about prices here. We have other things we're going to talk about, but just so you know that super high quality olive oil, actually, there's a cost to it. It's labor intensive to produce it. And then when you're extracting, we get anywhere from 9 to 12 or 12.5% yield. So if I have 100 kilograms of olives, I'll get anywhere from 10 to 12 kilograms of oil. That's 20 bottles. Okay, 100 kilograms of olives gives me 20 of these bottles of oil. Producing the way I produce. If you heat the olives up, you get a yield of 60%, 60. So I get a yield of 10%. If you heat it up, you get a yield of 60%. So there's a huge quantity difference there, but there's also a huge quality difference. So we are working with quality. All right, we're going to go on. One way you know what you're getting is to taste, right? So the way olive oil is easy that way. You can taste for quality. And so that's what we're going to do here. So we're just smelling first.
I'm getting leaves.
Leaves.
I'm getting tomato leaves.
Tomato leaves. And I'm getting some tomato fruit. And also I always smell kind of nuts, like a little bit of almond, kind of sweetness on the background.
Elaine, is the Sicilian one or the Tuscany one?
So we started with Sicilian, and the reason we did that is the milder oil. We're starting with the milder oil first.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't make that clear. So we're starting with the milder oil. Like if you're wine tasting, usually you start with the lighter, maybe a lighter white before you taste a heavier red. That's what we're doing here. So we're starting with the milder oil, which is the Sicilian oil. It's very, very fruity. The first thing you notice, it smells fresh and it smells very vegetal. And it smells very fruity, like tomato fruit. And as she said, like tomato leaves.
And I like the description of fruity. And sometimes what I say to somebody is, if somebody led you blindfolded into the grocery store, when you're in the produce department because of that constant,
It's like vegetal.
fresh smell from the produce.
Right. So if you were to smell an oil that was not made in this way, a super high quality olive oil, you might smell things like, sometimes they'll smell like vinegar or kind of a musty smell, or you might smell paint thinner. Yes, that's a good one.
Band-Aids. There's a Band-Aid or Play-Doh smell that I sometimes get.
Play-Doh, Band-Aid. So these are all things that we have smelled in olive oils that are not super high quality. So the first step in determining quality of, or to see if you like it or not, just smell it, right? And if you smell Play-Doh, or if you smell paint thinner, or if you smell like the oil that you use to oil the squeaky hinge on your door or something, then you're probably not dealing with one of these kinds of olive oils. Again, here we're smelling basically an intense kind of fruity sensation with tomato, and then getting down into it, kind of tomato leaves. A little bit of it smells a little bit pungent, but basically it's fruity and almost kind of round smelling. So now we're going to taste it. We're going to put just a little bit in our mouth. You take about half a teaspoonful into your mouth.
Doing strapaggia.
Yes. You have to kind of make some noise when you taste olive oil. Like I just said, oil floats on top of water. Oil will just kind of float on top of your tongue. It will float on top of saliva. It floats on top of right on top of your taste buds. So if you actually really want to taste it, you kind of have to suck it back a little bit. And you're just trying to kind of almost like create an emulsion in your mouth and really coat your palate. And that way you kind of get a good idea of what you're tasting.
Delightful.
Thank you.
So I'm getting sort of a symphony. It's not a straight shot. I'm getting a lot of dancing through my mouth. There's sort of an ether that reaches the upper palate. There's a slight tingle on the side of my tongue that just enlivens. And can't wait for some food to go with it.
This is a very bright and kind of like exuberant olive oil, and it's not super strong. It's actually a relatively mild oil, but it's pretty complex. And as she said, it's got a lot going on in all parts of your mouth. And there's almost like there's this persistent, just sort of kind of yummy round quality kind of up in here, right? So when you taste anything, what you feel in your mouth is literally what? Sweet, salty, acidic, bitter, and umami. That's it. So when you actually, those are your taste buds, but the flavor of something also is your retro olfactory sensation. So kind of what comes back into your olfactory sense. And this has that just very kind of persistent fruitiness and a little bit of a light spice. And it's lovely, and it is like tingly along the side of your tongue, and it just kind of keeps everything lively. It does not, do you have any do you perceive any bitterness in here?
Very slight.
Very slight bitterness and just enough little tingly spiciness.
But in evaluating olive oil, bitter is not always a bad characteristic.
Now, bitter is a good characteristic, in fact. So olive oil, pretty much all olive oils of high quality have fruitiness when you smell them in some sort of level of intensity, mild fruity, strong fruity, intense fruity. And then when you taste the oils, there's going to be some level of bitterness or and spiciness, and they'll be more or less present and more or less in equilibrium. So this oil has a nice little spice and not a lot of bitterness. But those are good qualities, and you want them to be in your olive oil, and you actually really want them to be in your olive oil. And I'll tell you why. And I had to write this down because I couldn't remember the words, the fancy, the names of the phenols.
Oh.
So olive oil, the better it tastes, the better it is for you. And we know olive oil is a healthy component of what they call the Mediterranean diet, which is a way of eating, basically, eating what's in season, basically, right? But olive oil is the main fat in the kitchen, and olive oil is very, very healthy for lots of different reasons. But what's interesting is when you taste spicy, you're actually tasting a polyphenol that is called oleoeuropein. You know how to say that? I might be saying that correctly.
And oleocanthal is part of that?
Oleocanthal is the bitter one. This is the, no, hang on a second, I'm getting mixed up. Oleocanthal is the spicy one. So it's got these anti-inflammatory characteristics that are literally like ibuprofen, and it's responsible for reducing chronic inflammatory disease, degenerative joint disease, and neurodegenerative diseases and various cancers. So this is super anti-inflammatory characteristics from the polyphenol that provides spiciness. And it's the oleoeuropein is the bitter quality. And this is the one, so the bitterness in olive oil is also helping to counteract metabolic syndrome and neurodegenerative disorders. This is the only polyphenol, this oil contains the only polyphenol that we know of so far that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and actually like scavenges free radicals in your brain. That's why it's so good for you. It's the bitterness. So you want the bitterness.
And we want to make sure that we reinforce that this is Biancolilla and Nocellar de Belice, two very common olives in Sicily, but also they're very present, well-handled in the higher end olive oil production.
Right.
They're very popular. You can create a good oil, but you still need the skill.
You definitely need the skill. Right. These oils, because they're, well, you need skill for any of them. These are relatively delicate olives though. And if they're not treated properly, they lose all of their characteristics immediately.
Let me ask you a question, because I really don't know the answer to this one. But let's say you have a crate of olives about the size of your stove, right? And that's, let's just say that's all you're producing, because time is of the essence. How long will it take from the time those olives are washed to the time you're ready to bottle it or put it in the tank? Is that an hour process? Is that a 45-minute process?
That actually, so we're talking about the time the olives are dumped in at the beginning of the mill, and then when the oil comes out at the end. They are reducing the kneading process down to literally just a few minutes. So if you use very old-fashioned equipment like millstones, it could probably take over an hour until you're able to mash the olives enough that you can then extract some oil from them. And in doing that, the friction of the millstones creates heat, and then of course it's exposed to oxygen in an open environment. So oxidation is happening, perfumes are escaping, et cetera, et cetera. They're working very hard now to reduce the amount of time of the kneading process. So you crush the olives, they go into a container, the newer equipment has an Archimedes screw in a vertical Maillotzer, and you put the oil in, it slowly moves down, and as soon as it hits the bottom, it goes to the separator. So even then, when I first started working with olive oil, the kneading process was between 30 and 45 minutes. It's now down to about 15. So the whole process before it actually comes out of the filter, it's probably about 35, 40 minutes from when it starts, from when they first just kind of rinse the olives off to when you actually get a drop of oil out of the filter.
It's amazing.
So it's amazing.
Amazing.
Okay, sorry. I think that it's perfect to introduce an argument that you tell the problem with the oxygen in the work from the olive to olive oil.
Yes.
And we have a question. What is the time of the freshness of the olive oil when you have in the bottle? You buy the bottle, and how long is the freshness? How long?
Okay, so olive oil that is stored properly, that means not exposed to air, heat, or light, or metal. Stainless steel is one thing, but those tin cans is something else. So you want to protect olive oil from anything that's going to cause it to oxidize, which is oxygen, heat, and light, hence the dark bottle. So if you have a full bottle of olive oil, no oxygen exposure, closed, stored in a cool, dark place, a super high quality olive oil will actually last for several years. I found a bottle, it was literally hidden in a corner of my wine cellar, so constant temperature in the dark. It was 5 years old, and it was excellent olive oil. Oil tends to mature like wine does, in the sense that the flavor characteristics, literally, they evolve in a good way over time. So the oil that I tasted that I had forgotten about in the wine cellar, it was still very good. It still had a little bit of spiciness and had a beautiful kind of nutty quality to it, but it was still very, very good, healthy olive oil, flavorful olive oil after 5 years. Once you open a bottle, you should just use it, because as you go, this bottle is already down to here, and it now has this much, it's in the bottle with that much oxygen, right? This much oil is exposed to this much oxygen. So that's just going to make the oil go bad. So once you open the bottle, use it. And we're talking about very high quality olive oils here. I think it's an international law. I don't think it's Italian. I think it's internationally. We're forced to put a best buy date on here. It's not a expiration date. It's a best before. So you must put best before 18 months from the date of bottling, which literally means nothing, because you can hold your oil in a tank for as long as you like, and then 18 months from the date of bottling means 0. You want to look for oil that is very well made. And again, if it's been stored properly, either in your wine cellar or in her warehouse, then the oil is very good for several years. a not very good olive oil, an oil that's just kind of iffy, it will taste good right there as soon as it comes out of the mill. And it will start to, it'll start to go downhill immediately. In 8 months from pressing, it will already show signs of the beginning of what's going to be rancidity. And if you think about it, 8 months is not very long, right? I mean, I have to make the oil, get it into tanks, bottle it, find somebody to buy it, put it on a boat, get it over there. They then, put it up on their website or whatever, and you click on it. By the time it gets to you, several months have gone by, right? So you really want to search out super high quality olive oils also for that reason. They last that much longer. And again, an olive oil that tastes good is good for you. An olive oil that doesn't taste very good is not very good for you.
I'd like to add a couple of things. There are some cultivars that don't last as long as others. So when I'm purchasing, I limit my purchases of the olive cultivars that I know are not long lasting, because there's no sense in people being disappointed. We also track from our relationships with the producers to know what year's harvest it really is, no matter what date they're putting on the bottle is the best by date.
We also, so by law, I have to put on the bottle the best by, which is 18 months from when I bottled it. But again, I also put on here the date that I harvested it. So I think that's important, and I put that on here.
And I like working with producers who run out. If I go to place an order in July and they say, I don't have any more oil this year, as much as it hurts my inventory, it's a great thing, because they're not buying somebody else's oil to stick in their bottle. They don't have an excess of oil. And so I know that in October, when they say, hey, I'm ready for your order, I know it's the new oil. So that's a really good thing.
Right.
So, okay, is it time to
So
taste?
we're going to taste in the Tuscan oil. What do you think?
I'm wondering about the comparative differences in the aroma. I know the aroma is different because the characters are different. Unfortunately, there's not much Sicilian left in my cup.
You can
Sometimes,
have some more.
but now it's like the Tuscan's getting me already.
I haven't tasted it yet. So the Tuscan one is, it's interesting, it has less perfume, but it's actually more intense olive oil.
Right. Yes, thank you for explaining that, because I was trying to get there, but I got stuck.
So when you open the bottle, the Sicilian oil kind of, it just sort of overwhelms you with these lovely perfumes, but they're milder than the actual perfumes that are in here. Tuscan oils tend not to be very expansively perfumed, but if you, again, warm it up and then smell it,
That's kind
it's
of
quite pungent. It almost smells like raw artichoke. It's quite kind of got this bitter, almost tannic smell to it. And there's some kind of balsamic aromas in here as well. Like you can smell sort of like herbs, rosemary.
Just more powerful.
It's much more powerful.
More direct. It's not dancing around as much.
It's more linear.
Mhm.
It's more linear. It's got a great, the bitterness here is wonderful, and it tastes good, but it also, this is one of the things that makes it go so well with food. Olive oil tends to really pump up the flavors of any foods that it comes into contact with, but the bitterness and spicy, they're actually very nicely balanced.
Never.
They're very persistent. I have still got lots of bitterness around here and lots of spiciness in the back.
I'm craving some food that I can put a little salt on as well.
I kind of just bring it all together. So yeah, this is almost a little bit more like kind of full and round in your mouth, and this is more vertical, more intense, and a little bit more direct.
Still tingling.
But it's still, yeah, and very persistent. Very yummy olive oil, if I do say so myself.
Do we have any more questions?
Any more questions? We're going to talk, before we start to cook, I'm going to talk about the just what you look at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing we didn't really talk about is how the oil feels in your mouth. And oil should feel thick, it should look thick. And you can, if you're in the store, you can kind of shake a bottle, and if it looks like there's water in the bottle, skip it. Oil is thick. But what's interesting about really high quality olive oil is that it's not greasy. I mean, it's obviously oil, but it's not greasy. It doesn't coat your palate. Like
It gets clean fast.
your palate gets clean really fast.
Yeah.
It's not like when you eat like a donut that's been fried, and I don't know what they fry donuts in your mouth, you can like feel that for the next 24 hours. That's not good. Good olive oil does not do that. Your mouth kind of freshens back up immediately. So what you're looking for there, as far as you're looking for a thick viscous liquid. And then we were kind of talking about color before. Both of these oils are quite green. I don't know if y'all can kind of see how green that is. And if it's in a big container, it's like really green, but that just happens to be what these olive varieties give out. And they're actually two very different colors of green. And this is actually a lighter green, and this is actually a darker green. But that's just because that's what those olive varieties give out. And some other olive varieties produce oils that are more golden colored. And that's not better or worse, it's just different.
I like to compare olives to apples. You've got Granny Smith, you've got Red Delicious. You've got a whole range, same thing, there are parallels with olives. I also like to remind people that apple cider is cloudy, which really Novello oil, when it's fresh before it's filtered, is cloudy. And then once it's filtered, it should be very crystalline, crystalline with a color tint, but you can't see any sediment in this. And an oil that's well filtered will be long lasting.
Right, definitely. Right, so you would rather see an oil, if Piero is your friend and Piero brings you a bottle of oil and it's kind of opalescent looking because it hasn't filtered down, then okay. But if you're buying, use it. Yeah, but use it. And he probably just made it yesterday, so you're good. But if you find a bottle of oil on a shelf anywhere, you want it to be good and crystalline, kind of very see-through. You want to know it's been through a filter.
And that's really, we could date it different ways, but that's really an innovation of the last 20 to 40 years. This idea that filtration is super important. It makes the oils long lasting. And they now have the technology to do it that they didn't have X number of years ago.
Right. Yeah, that is a new development. And it's one of those things too that is a little bit slow to take off because filtering costs more money. And you actually lose some oil. So the filters actually absorb oil, right? So you're losing a small amount of oil and you're actually paying more. So a lot of small farmers are trying to come home with as much oil as possible, and their family's gonna live on this oil for the next year. So it was slow to catch on because people are like, you're gonna take away oil and I'm gonna pay more. No. That's what I was saying. Piero, he got it. He tried it. He realized it. He's like, this oil lasted, it lasts a lot longer. It's a lot better for a lot longer. Worth it. So definitely worth it. And by now, there are still some kind of grocery store bottles that'll say unfiltered, which that's not really a good thing. They didn't spend the money that it takes to filter the oil and make it good, right? So you don't really want that. True.
Well, a specific Novello that you really want to have right away, finish in the first month, sure.
So she's talking about brand new olive oil, which is literally just out of the press. And that's one of the things that you get it, you use it up within a week, literally use it right away. You put it on a piece of, toast rubbed with garlic and you eat and you enjoy it like that. But this one, it's the kind of thing that it's meant to be consumed immediately. It's not meant to be put away. You don't want to leave that in your wine cellar.
It's the Beaujolais of olive oil. It's a celebration of the new season.
The Beaujolais. So why don't we start cooking and then
wait, please. It's very difficult to.
We can have more questions. We can have more questions. I'm going to go ahead and get that up, but keep asking questions.
Wait. It's very difficult to say something when two women speak. So we have a question. It's very interesting, but I have a lot of questions. Some question about the shipping and the possibility to order your olive oil. And we told at the end, I think. And one question is very interesting. Linda say, do you know whether different qualities of olive oil have different and uncomfortable effect on our gastrointestinal systems? I think it's you can be intolerant or have any allergy.
I've never heard that. Olive oil is famously easy to digest. It's actually I don't remember this, they've done some studies about comparing like an animal fat like butter, for example, how long it takes your body to actually digest it so that it's, you know, the energy that you're consuming, the energy that you're getting out of it is actually available to your muscles and your brain and your body. And olive oil is very easy to digest, and you digest it very quickly, like within, you know, hours as opposed to, or an hour as opposed to butter, which is like tomorrow. So I don't remember the exact times frames here, but olive oil is actually quite easy to digest. Olive oil makes other nutrients bioavailable. But whether, I've never heard of anybody being intolerant to olive oil. I have a ton of food intolerances. Thank goodness olive oil is not one of them, because that would really be a drag. But I'm just not aware of that. Maybe I don't know the answer to that, but I've never heard of that.
I think people try to make a castor oil sort of comparison. But I've not heard anything medically about olive oil.
Right. We're unaware of that. We're unaware
We
of,
shouldn't go deeper into that.
right. We're not aware of, yeah.
I think that the problem is sometimes you can find, like any other food things, some product adulterated. So it's not the problem of olive oil, but the quality of the olive oil.
That could be too.
This is the best problem. But I know that
There are a lot of olives. I mean, unfortunately, there have been some, you know, products on the shelf that are called olive oil that are not olive oil.
yeah, okay. But I know that it's very difficult, but you should be you should have an allergy to the olive oil. It's very rare. Not rare. So sorry, not rare. It's crudo, raro. It's uncommon.
Rare. No, you said rare. That's correct. No, I've never heard of that. I mean, it could definitely exist. I'm unfamiliar with it. Actually, I'll look that up. And if I find anything, I'll let you know.
Andava bene prima.
Cosa?
Così. Così.
See, so we're going to cook. Y'all can keep asking questions. We'll be happy to keep answering questions. I'm going to just make a couple of recipes while we're talking. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to make two recipes. I'm going to make some beans, and I have cannellini beans, and I have soaked them and boiled them. These are the raw ones in the terracotta pot over there. I've soaked them and boiled them. And then we're going to use beans for one dish, and we're going to use beet greens, or we call them beet greens. It's chard for another dish. So this is chard. So this is dish number 2 is the chard. Dish number 1 is beans. So the beans, I'm going to put with sausage because I'm kind of a glutton. So I'm just going to break some sausage up and let it sizzle with some oil. Will you bring me the oils so we can cook? I'm just going to take it out of its casing. Y'all can actually use breakfast sausage for this. This is Tuscan sausage, so it has no fennel in it. A lot of times when you buy Italian sausage in the store in the United States, they put fennel in it, which is a Sicilian thing. This is Tuscan sausage, so
Smells great.
no fennel. This is actually kind of fancy sausage. It hasn't gone through a meat grinder. Somebody chopped it by hand. It was nice of them.
Big globs of fat.
Right. All right, so I'm going to start just browning that with a little bit of olive oil in the pan. And I'm using the Tuscan oil. So Tuscan oil goes really, it's kind of literally goes very well with beans, right, Lorenzo? How often have you had Tuscan oil on beans?
Sorry?
L'olio toscano sui fagioli.
Yeah. You know, for me, the best is always the Tuscany, because I speak from home.
He's so predictable. Yeah, Italians are very patriotic. So Lorenzo is very patriotic and faithful to his Tuscan origins. So I'm going to smash a couple cloves of garlic. We're going to use garlic in both of these recipes and a little bit of hot pepper.
If you want, Linda, ask, can you comment on California olive oil?
Want to comment on California olive oil? So
Well, there's a couple things going on in California. There are some big producers that are owned by the Spanish. And the Spanish really have created almost industrial olive oil production. They actually plant new groves in such a way that trees can go, not trees, that mechanical equipment that looks like the letter H goes right over the trees and helps shake the trees and shake the olive oil out of the trees. If you think about the hillsides in Italy, you really can't run much equipment on the hillsides in Italy, but in Spain and therefore in California, new groves are being built in a high intensity industrial fashion.
What's interesting there, though, is that only certain olive varieties are adept at growing in those high intensity.
High intensity, yet staying low enough to fit under the almost the crane in a way.
Right.
There are some small wine producers in California who are also doing some olive oil. And I don't want to speak negatively about that. California cannot produce enough olive oil to fill the needs of the country. You know, and for people who get into the whole, 0 kilometer thing, well, what's worse, a truck from California to the East Coast, or the efficiency of ocean freight coming across the cool North Atlantic?
Well, another thing though is that, they have their own flavor profiles. There are no olives native to North America. The varieties, I believe, are all, from Mediterranean. So especially the high intensity, there's an olive called Mission. I think isn't there a Mission olive?
There's a Mission, yeah.
So that was brought in by the Spaniards, but obviously it was a Spanish variety that was brought in and has, sort of naturalized or whatever. So you're basically, it's like bringing in, they brought in grapevines as well. So the difference in soil and climate though changes the flavor. So you're getting different flavors of olive oil. So I actually don't know a lot of California oils. They're not available where I live. I live in Italy. They're just not here.
So,
but it'd be interesting to taste them.
If we're talking about California Olive Ranch, as the years have gone by, they've had years where they've actually had to buy olive oil from other countries. I think they're pretty good about labeling their bottles with a code that indicates when oil has come from other countries. Certainly they have skill. I know a little bit more about what Costco does, even with their Tuscan. So if you think about the international standard for acidity to be 0.8, do I have my decimal point in the right place?
Yes.
And then
No, 0.08.
0.08, and Costco allows theirs to be 0.05 or below 0.05, and most of ours are below 0.03. And truly, wherever you start, the olive oil oxidation will, over some amount of time, eventually rise. And if you think about what's in the grocery store, let's say that barely counted, let's say it barely met the criteria when it left the mill, by the time it goes in a bottle, goes on a truck, sits in a warehouse, and then sits under the light in the grocery store, it's probably exceeding that level.
Right. So that's what we were talking about, the difference between high quality and maybe not quite so high quality. So extra virgin and virgin, just to use those terms, but you can get, like she's saying, the lab report as soon as from the oil, as soon as it comes out of the mill, is not the same as the lab report 6 months later, because oil evolves. And so you want to start out with the absolute highest quality possible, because it's going to just kind of, the numbers are going to change. Olive oil is perishable. Again, if it's super high quality and you store it very well, it will last for a long time, but all oil is gonna go rancid. So you really want to start with the highest quality possible from the get-go. So I've got some hot pepper and garlic going in this pan, and I just have sausage browning in this pan. So I'm using 2 different olive oils for the 2 different recipes, and I've chosen the great kind of spicy, bitter Tuscan oil which I'm gonna put with the beans and the sausage. So the sausage is browning. I'm gonna go ahead and add just a smashed garlic clove and some hot pepper. And as soon as that kind of starts to release its aroma, I am going to add some beans. These are my cannellini beans.
You need this lady.
I'm gonna use, I'll just use that. Okay. I kind of like my wooden spoon. So I'm gonna ladle in some beans with their liquid, hence the sizzle.
Now, was that a full about a kilo of beans, about a half kilo of beans that you can start with?
I don't know.
Okay.
Can't answer. So I'm using a little bit of liquid from the beans, and I'm gonna mash up some of the beans. Just smash them in here. That kind of makes kind of gives a thick consistency. And the starch in the beans kind of makes almost like a little sauce in a way.
Elaine, ce la fai a abbassare leggermente lo schermo del computer?
See, oh, because the echo, y'all can see now.
Perfetto.
So again, this is just sausage, olive oil, garlic, hot pepper, and then the beans. And the beans I cooked some bay laurel. I used a leaf of bay in the beans. I'm gonna go ahead and put some bay in with the sausage mixture as well. You can use any herbs you want. You could use sage in here. That would be kind of a Tuscan classic. I really like bay, so I'm using that. And I'm just gonna let that cook down a little bit. And then the greens.
Too bad they can't smell it.
Very perfumed. So the greens, again, I used chard, which I showed you all in the beginning. So just some Swiss chard, which I took the leaves off and I just rinsed them, and then I put them in a pot and just let them kind of, almost steam. You can boil it if they're tender. You can just sort of steam them like that. If they're a little bit tougher leaves, you might want to boil them. But however you want to prepare your greens, it's fine. And so here are the greens that are already prepared. So I'm going to just add them to the pan with the garlic and the hot pepper. And then this is the Sicilian oil. I sometimes use Tuscan oil on the greens, kind of depends on the flavor I'm looking for. But I've already got some of the Sicilian oil here, and I'm going to use more on top to finish it. But the reason I use the Sicilian is because I am going to add some really bright lemon zest, and I'm going to add some really creamy, milky, fresh, kind of almost sweet ricotta. And those flavors go so well with the Sicilian oil. So both of the recipes here are kind of really showing, I've chosen the recipes to kind of highlight the different flavors of the oil. So oil is not one size fits all. You choose wine, you match wine to your foods. We match oils to our foods as well. So I tend to keep various olive oils in the kitchen, and I like pugliese oils for some things, and I love my Sicilian oil on something like this, and I love my Tuscan oil on the beans with the sausage. These are almost done. I also made a dessert with the Tuscan oil, so we'll talk about that in a second too. So the greens have been tossed with the hot pepper and the garlic. I'm going to add some salt. And then I'm going to stir through some fresh ricotta. So fresh ricotta, really again, just milky, creamy, sweet. And I'm just going to kind of stir that through here. I don't want to mix it up too much. I want to leave some little chunks of ricotta. It has just drunk up the olive oil. So I'm going to put it on a plate, and then so olive oil is really good in cooking because it exalts the flavors of everything that it comes into contact with. So it's almost, it literally acts like salt. It will kind of pump up the flavors of your food, like putting salt on it does. It kind of helps other flavors kind of harmonize together. I need a grater. There's a little bit of lemon zest on here. And then to serve it, just a little swirl of fresh oil just to get some more of those good kind of bright spicy flavors on there. And now I'm going to serve the beans. So this is kind of a one dish meal. There's lots of different recipes with beans. I kind of like this one that has a little bit of meat in it, just because again, it makes it more of a kind of a robust, it's not just a side dish, it's actually kind of your main dish. And you can do this. I think there was a bean question. Is there a bean question, Lorenzo, or did you already answer that?
Yeah, but the question I have already.
Okay. So these are
the question is that if the beans are already cooked or just soaked.
No, cooked. You answered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lorenzo the chef answered that quickly. Yeah, these beans were already boiled, and I just then sauteed them with the sausage and the olive oil and the garlic to give them a little flavor. And then again, topping them with some more oil, and the Tuscan oil just makes the beans shine, it really brings out the flavor. So it's kind of worth trying. And I love the cannellini beans, which is very typical to Tuscany. But I even do this with black-eyed peas. So it's kind of the kind of thing you can do with, any greens. You can use spinach for that. You can use any greens you want. You can use any beans you want. And it's the olive oil that really kind of pulls it all together. So that was super simple. I mean, you had to prepare the greens ahead of time and the beans ahead of time, but then you just put it together like that. And that's kind of the beauty of Italian cooking. Very few ingredients and just kind of a quick prep. Tastes good for you. And then lastly, dessert, good for you also. So I made some olive oil brownies. And I made brownies with Piero, the Tuscan oil, which really goes well with chocolate. If I make, a lot of times I make my Aunt Ida's pound cake, and it is such a great, yummy, dense cake. And I would use the Sicilian oil for that because it's kind of delicate. But with the chocolate, the Tuscan oil really works well with the chocolate flavor and is perfectly matched to that. So I've used Tuscan oil. And for the nuts, I used hazelnuts, toasted hazelnuts, just kind of gives it more of a little Italian flavor. But you can, of course, use, whatever. So all these recipes are on my website. Lorenzo, if you could type that in, oliodelladonna.com. So you can find the recipes. There's also on there is a link to Luann Olio to Go's website, or you might want to put that up to Lorenzo, olio2go.com.
Yeah, who is the number?
Yeah, Olio to Go. There you go. I can see it. You got it right. So y'all at some point had asked about ordering oils. Luann's got a shipment. Is it in yet?
Should be in this week.
So she has a shipment on the way. It's, went over on the boat. And it should be in this week. And I have some inventory too. And so you can actually order from me. You can order from Luann. And all the information is on her website. It's also on my website. So you can check it out and send either of us an email if you have questions. Do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I see a question. Wait, I try to read. Will the bean dish work at all with any seafood instead of meat? Tuna.
Tuna would be very good.
Yeah,
thank you, Lorenzo.
Particularly tuna packed in oil.
And tuna packed in oil. So yeah, that's kind of you see that here in Tuscany a lot. And that was one of Piero. Piero ate that every Wednesday. And Piero invited me over and we would have bean day. So Piero didn't believe in soaking his beans. I soaked the beans first. Piero, actually, if you go on my website, you'll see a picture of Piero winnowing his beans. He, of course, grew his own beans. And he would put them on in the morning, go out into the field to, work the, either, prune the olives or work the grapevines or whatever, go into the vegetable garden. And then come back for lunchtime. The beans are done. He would boil them with sage. And then he would serve a bowl of beans with the liquid, a bunch of black pepper, a huge piece of tuna, and a ton of olive oil, like a lot of olive oil. So you're kind of drinking this olive oil and bean liquid soup. Really, really good. And that's you don't even have to do the sauteing part at that point.
Or you can use also pasta. You can make pasta with beans.
You make pasta with beans. That's kind of a whole nother recipe. But what
Yeah,
about
we made it too. We made it. And
just, you just like saute them together? Because there's like a longer, more involved pasta.
yeah, it's from the northern of Italy, this plate. Or also in Rome, they make.
What about fagioli al luccioletto?
Oh, wow, wonderful. Yeah, I love it with tomato sauce and a lot of sage and garlic and sausage. If you like it.
But that's also without sausage. Some people
Yeah,
add
okay.
sausage on top, but the cooking
Only beans, tomato, sage, and garlic.
So there's a lot of sage. So you would do garlic and olive oil and sage, and then a little bit of, I don't know, I prefer that without too much tomato, but you can use as much tomato as you like. I prefer it to be kind of pink and not too red, but you can use as much of the tomato sauce as you want. And then the beans, you just let it kind of cook down and it kind of turns into this nice creamy, thick, very yummy. That recipe is on my website as well if you're looking for it. Lots of variations, tons of bean recipes.
But
right?
the best recipe with the olive oil is pinzimonio.
And we didn't make any. Lorenzo loves his pinzimonio. That is you want to tell them what that is?
Yeah, pinzimonio is very simple to make. You have only to take a bowl and put a lot of olive oil and salt and pepper, and then you take fresh vegetables like carrots or spring onions or the leaves of the artichoke, and you only have to put in the olive oil and eat like biscuits.
You dip.
Yeah.
It's pretty thick.
It's the best appetizer that you can find before a very good lunch.
There's a Tuscan talking, okay? The best appetizer on the planet is raw vegetables dipped in super high quality, good olive oil with some salt and pepper. And that's it.
And also good pepper. I think the difference also is the good pepper.
I agree. Good, fresh, cracked black pepper.
Also in the beans that you make, a little bit of grated black peppers, I think it's the best way to.
I agree. In this particular recipe, I used red pepper, and for some reason, I don't ever mix. It's like one or the other, but yeah, you can also use black pepper. And if you do the tuna, the black pepper is excellent. And also in the uccelletto, black pepper is more the, you do the tomato vegetarian.
Yeah, we use in Tuscany, we use a lot of black pepper, not for example, peperoncino, but we use more black pepper.
That's true. Yeah, these recipes are not like strictly Sicilian or strictly Tuscan. I made them up, but they kind of follow along. But yes, black pepper there instead of red pepper would have been really good substitute.
Okay, we have a very good question that can introduce some kind of cooking of beans. But I don't know if you want to make other lesson with beans. But Linda asked if you add salt with initially when you start cooking beans or not.
Yes, I do add salt. I add salt. Yes, the beans have a little more flavor that way, and they also retain their own flavor. We've had this discussion in these classes before. I also put salt in the water that I used for the greens.
Yeah.
I think that if you put a vegetable in water, or if you put anything into water, basically the salt's going to try to find a balance, the same amount of salt in the water as in the vegetables. So the water, while you're boiling the vegetables, will kind of suck out, in order to get the salt out, will also suck out some of the flavor. So if you put a little bit of salt in the water, so the salt balance is kind of there, you don't really have to be chemical about this, but if there's a little bit of salt in the water, it kind of balances out the salt in your vegetables, and your vegetables retain more of their own flavor. They don't leach out quite so much into the water. So that's a good reason to use salt. And then the beans, it just helps kind of, gives them a little bit more flavor. So yes, I did use salt. And we might do a bean class. I think that's a good idea. So maybe our next class will be beans. So I'll let you know next time we have a class. And we're going to say goodbye because it is now, I see we've gone for 1 hour and 10 minutes, which is longer than we expected.
Yeah, but we have another question about your upcoming culinary tours.
Oh, yes. Questions?
No. If you can tell a little bit about the culinary tour that you make.
So I have a couple of trips planned. This year, we've actually sold out. We're going to Sicily in the spring, and we're going to Tuscany, and we do trips. We also have for next year, we're going to do Sicily, Tuscany, and a Puglia trip. And we go visit places with kind of the idea of kind of our first approach is learning about their food traditions and meeting food producers. And then we also, make art visits and, visit monuments kind of as they present themselves as we're moving about the countryside, right? So we go and visit a wine producer who maybe happens to be near some Greek ruins. And so we go do that too. A sample day of our Sicily trip is to go visit a winemaker in the morning, then go to the sea and visit with a person who works with tuna and makes all sorts of preserved tuna products. So we have a seaside lunch of tuna, and then in the afternoon we go to some ancient Greek ruins. So that's kind of an idea of how a day goes. We do similar things in Tuscany. We see works of art, kind of literally out in the boondocks where the Good Butcher is. So we go out for the Good Butcher, but he happens to be, in the same village with, a great church with, a Fra Angelico painting or something. So those are the kind of visits that we do. We meet with people we meet with olive oil makers, we meet with cheese makers, winemakers, and we have some cooking classes, and it's just kind of a good way to learn about a place through its food culture. And then of course, with art too. So the best, that's kind of the best of both worlds in Italy, art and food combined. So that's kind of the point of our trips. So check that out also on the different website, elainetrigioni.com. That has all information about trips. So send me a message if you're interested and I'll send you all the information. All right, good. So y'all, we're going to sign off. Anybody who has any questions, feel free to email us, take a look at our websites. Luann and I both would be happy to answer questions. And I look forward to seeing y'all again. And if you haven't tasted some olive oil yet, I think you need to get some. And now you know who to get it from. So y'all, thanks so much for being here. It's great to see y'all. And I hope to see you again soon, right? Lorenzo, we'll do another one soon.
Okay.
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 All right. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
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 Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, bye.